Among the items in the $1.7 trillion spending bill Congress hopes to pass this week is additional money to help prosecute January 6 rioters. The package includes more than $2.6 billion for U.S. attorneys, an increase of more than $212 million. The House Appropriations Committee says that additional funding is meant to help prosecute January 6 cases as well as domestic terrorism cases. All this comes a day after the January 6 committee voted to make criminal referrals of former President Trump to the DOJ, and a day before the committee is set to release its final report. For more, I'm joined by Tia Mitchell, Washington correspondent for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, Faz Shakir, senior advisor to Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders, and Brad Todd, Republican strategist and founder of On Message. So I really, of course, want to start with you, Tia. Talk a little bit about this additional funding that Congress has passed here. What is it meant to do? How significant do lawmakers think it is?
Well, the thing to remember is that new indictments are coming down every day. Even today, more people are being identified. And then, of course, all these hundreds of cases are still winding their way through the criminal justice system. So it is a big expense. It's a big caseload. And then also when you talk about domestic terrorism, of course, we've seen some mass shootings and a lot of going on that has its roots in terroristic activity, domestic terroristic activity, racism, anti-Semitism, sexism. So it's clear that there's a big load on the Department of Justice, and Congress wants to help them do their job to address it.
And Vaz, is this a big victory for Democrats to be able to get this funding in there, even though there was a lot of back and forth?
Well, it's a part of a truth and reconciliation process, Shamish. Like, if we're going to be honest about a dark period in American history, we got to have accountability over it, and we can't just look away from it or say, hey, it didn't happen. We have to hold people to an account that says, hey, if you did something wrong, act in a traitorous way, we're going to come after you, so that future generations don't get the idea that somehow you can subvert democracy and no one will really care.
And Brad, we heard Mitch McConnell talk about the fact that it's very clear that former President Trump, that he was to blame for January 6th. We're now seeing all of these sort of things, legislative, I should say, measures being passed. Is that sort of the real response here? Is that the real response from Republicans? It's the one that's in writing, would you say?
Well, I think, first off, the referral to the DOJ from a congressional committee has all the enforcement power of an interoffice memo, right? There's nothing that goes with it. It's still upon the DOJ to evaluate the facts and decide what legal action they might take. I think the additional money that's for prosecuting here is fairly non-controversial, although it will become controversial if it becomes part of the DOJ's baseline. There's real concern among Republicans that DOJ doesn't get mission creep here and decide that it's going to be even more active in matters of politics. And so I think watching for the next year's budget cycle is going to be where Republicans are going to weigh in.
But there's also the Electoral Reform Act. They're changing and making sure that there are no ambiguities here, the ones that former President Trump and others try to exploit. What do you make of that and the Republicans signing on to that?
It's pretty bipartisan. I mean, Rand Paul's come out for it. The Cato Institute's come out for it. Plenty of conservative groups are for it. And I don't think clarity is anything anybody objects to. Although, for some people who claim there was no need for clarity back in 2021, I think now that say we need clarity is a little bit of a mixed message. But I don't think it's very controversial.
I do think, to your point, though, there is a lot in this omnibus spending package that is almost like a rebuke of some of the kind of MAGA Republican talking points. You've got the Electoral Count Act. You've got the funding to prosecute January 6th, those accused of carrying out January 6th, but you also have things like funding for Ukraine and, a lot of things that even, especially in the Senate, they say we've got to go ahead and get this done because we're not sure what's going to happen when Republicans take control in the House. And there's a lot there that Senate Republicans are spinning it. It is bipartisan, but it's a lot of things that Democrats have been saying needs to happen.
I think you're saying this, but politically it's Trump bait because it's asking and begging him to say, go ahead. You want to campaign against a Justice Department investigation? You want to campaign against Electoral Vote Count Act? Speak out. And it's interesting, actually, by the way, he hasn't tweeted, he hasn't said anything. He's kind of gone into a cocoon and hasn't spoken in a long time, which is odd for somebody who's very gabby, as we know. And so I think he's operating and running scared. And I think Democrats are saying we need to bring him into the public debate if he wants to be there.
There's no question. Democrats want Donald Trump in the debate because they think it advantages them. They want to attack Donald Trump and say, oh, we just need to be rid of him, except please let's not be rid of him. I think this omnibus, though, even though there are plenty of parts, there's something in here for everyone in some ways. But I think that it's real point of for the Senate here to take a chance and try to do this longer-term omnibus over the objections of Kevin McCarthy and House Republican leaders, in fact, most conservatives. The Senate Republicans, or just enough of them anyway, are going along with something that House Republicans don't want them to do.
Senate Republicans, including Mitch McConnell.
Well, at least a third of them will. You know, I mean, and really you can look at the Senate Republican Conference as three groups, right? 16 people voted to delay leadership elections. Those are sort of critics of Senator McConnell. There are another 16 or so who are pretty staunch defenders of Senator McConnell no matter what he does. The other 16 people are kind of in the middle.
Yeah.
And so I think that Senator McConnell's taken a pretty big chance here by agreeing to something that House conservatives don't want. We'll see if that impacts his leadership potentially.
To your point of Trump going away, it's a fundamentally Republican question, right? That's the point. Is like he's never gone until Republicans decide he's gone, which is playing out in the course of this debate because of the fracturization, which Democrats will take all day. If you want the House Republicans,
not just take, but
seek all day.
Well, I wanna also turn to another story. Republican George Santos. I'm coming to you first.
From fake elector to fake elector.
Because there's some folks are wondering, how did Democrats not see this in the opposition research? I mean, the reporting here is that he has questionable records for school, for work, for real estate property. There's a check fraud case in Brazil, and somehow he's wealthy and having all this money after being evicted, according to the New York Times reporting. So how did Democrats miss this?
Well, they blew it on multiple levels, of course, but it wasn't just a Democratic miss. Obviously, Republicans.
I did want to say,
right. Certainly missed deep dive research. right. Didn't do the deep dive. You didn't have a proper vetting of them, for damn sure. But I think actually there's going to be more explosive content yet to come, Yamiche, because what we don't know is how this guy got wealthy overnight. How do you get wealthy overnight? You didn't get a lotto ticket. What happened here? And what we're going to find, I think, is some illegal wrongdoing, which actually would then jeopardize his actual seat. Right now, if you lie on your resume, you embellish your resume, okay, fine. People do that. It's not good. It's not appropriate. But you start committing financial crimes to get into office, now we're talking again about DOJ prosecution.
Brad, how did Republicans not see this? How did he become their nominee?
Well, primary voters pick the nominee, and I suspect that they'll have a different choice in 2 years. I mean, I suspect he'll have a tough primary. I suspect he'll struggle in his primary. I suspect if he were to get through that, he's going to have a really tough general election. But, you know, he'd been active in New York politics for quite some time. He'd run before. This is the way primary voters get to pick.
But
People
I
in
have to say,
Washington don't get to pick.
I mean, I worked on Long Island. There's a strong Republican Party there. So the question is still, the Republican Party, did they not, the people that were running against him, the actual party officials, did they not go and say, let's check this guy's resume out?
It's a thing of the past to think that party officials have any say-so on who Republican Party nominates. I mean, to say Republicans herd like cats is an insult to cats. And, you know, it's just not possible anymore for even if Republican primary party officials had decided he shouldn't be the nominee, that they could control it.
But I think it also tells us a lot about American politics, for better or for worse. You know, it's not about who's the best qualified. It's not about who can prove their resume. It's about who is able to win the primary, who is able to win over voters. And a lot of people are able to navigate that system in ways that perhaps shield their other shortcomings. We've seen that. I mean, Donald Trump, Marjorie Taylor Greene, the list goes on and on and on of people say, well, how did that person get elected? They worked the system, they got the votes, and they won. And that's, you know, for better or for worse, that's America's democracy.
And briefly, I mean, this also shows that gumshoe reporting, just going out there and checking this, that gets you some answers here, Tia, for our industry, that is.
That does. And I mean, I think also, you know, in defense of the local media, there have been limitations, downsizing, things like that. But I think there were grumblings on the ground about Representative Santos or candidate Santos, and it didn't really matter to the people who were who had to elect him. I mean, I'm not saying they knew everything, but there were, you know, there were some things out there.
This is a black eye for the New York Times, though. It's the large newsroom in America, and it's right there in their backyard, and they didn't find this out in a full year of campaigning. I mean, it's a rough day for the Times.
It's a black eye for, I would say, anybody involved in this.
Totally.
What did you say? I mean, Republicans, Democrats, maybe journalists, but...
And the least black eye for the New York Times, who ultimately reported...
You started out by giving the New York Times credit. I want to back up just a second.
When he announced for the race, we were told the House Republican aides knew that this guy was toxic and didn't want to touch him with a 10-foot pole. What does it say about Republicans who knew that and didn't say anything? That is morally reprehensible.
Big questions of how this man ended up here, but we'll definitely keep watching this story.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.